Greetings everyone, Craig Hester here, and thank you for joining us again on our journey through all the watches and accessories that are available at R2A Watches.com. And we thank you for continuing to watch our videos on YouTube, or if you're catching them at R2A Watches. If you are watching this on YouTube, be sure and hit like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you get the early notifications when we do a new video. If you are watching this on Facebook, you want to join the closed group Vostok Europe Timepieces. Don't let the name fool you. We talk about all the watches that are available at R2A Watches.com on the group Vostok Europe Timepieces, or VET, on Facebook, as today we are talking about Sturmanskie. So let's jump right into that. We are talking about the Sturmanskie brand today. One of my favorite brands to talk about because I love the rich history of Sturmanskie. Sturmanskie was the first watch in space on the wrist of Yuri Gagarin, and that is the watch we are talking about today. They have a rich history in both watches that are built for aeronautics and space travel, and they also have a rich history in watches that are built for diving. They were military watches for the Russian military before they were released to the public. I've done a number of videos over the years. If you're one of the fans of R2A watches and one of the fans of Sturmanskie, you're already familiar with the fact that Sturmanskie built the first watch to go into space that was on the wrist of Yuri Gagarin. Over the years, we've done a number of coverages of the different commemorative editions that have been produced by Sturmanskie over the years. But this one is a little bit different. This one is really quite special compared to the others. Not that the others aren't amazing, and that they haven't come out with just some really, really cool commemorative editions, both ones that are extremely similar to the original that Yuri Gagarin wore, to some more modern and interesting color combinations that they've done, and plating on the watches and so forth. But however, if you want to get back to the original, if you want to get back to the heart of the story about the Sturmanskie watch that did go up on the first human space flight with Yuri Gagarin, this one really is all about that story. And what makes this one different than many of the others you've heard me talk about in the past is that this is the actual size of the original Gagarin watch, which, believe it or not, was 33 millimeter. That shows you a lot about how, well, watches have changed over the years because the original Gagarin watch being such a small watch. But I want to tell you, well, by today's standards, I wanted to show you, though, it was interesting to me and quite fascinating that even though it's a 33 millimeter, I'm going to jump to a wrist shot really quick. It really looks correct on the wrist. And I was surprised by that because I typically wear, when I'm wearing Sturmanskies, I typically wear larger ones. Like I've got a Stingray right here. I do love the Stingray. I wear it. I wear my Mars. I tend to wear big watches. Vostok Europe is larger watches. Usually about the smallest thing I'll ever wear will be a 45, 44. And even that is bigger, much bigger than this watch. Nevertheless, it wears on the wrist really well at 33 millimeters. And that was the size of the watch then. That would be what we would call a lady's watch today in a lot of ways. But again, it does look remarkably acceptable on the wrist. Acceptable is the wrong word, but everybody has a different definition. Size is one of those things where you have to say there's no accounting for taste in terms of size of a watch. I am going to do the quick caliper on it so that you can see that it is a 33 millimeter timepiece. There you go, 32. I got to come a little bit further. There we go. We got right at 33. Thickness is 11.2. This is a small watch, but it is exactly the same dimensions as the watch that Yuri Gagarin wore into space. To show that, I want to give a shout out to Jason Blood, who's a friend of ours and a customer, who loaned me a original Gagarin that he picked up not too long ago, actually. Now, I want to be clear that this watch is not exactly like the original. There have been some changes. As I understand it, this one does have a new dial. It's really hard now to pick up. It's getting more and more difficult to pick up one that's in pristine shape from the original, even though there were many, many, many produced. But this gives you an idea. This is quite similar to what the original Gagarin looked like. So if you're looking at the two, and you can see same size, absolutely nothing on the case back. Now we have all of the fancy case backs that we do. I mean, you look at the back of the Stingray. In fact, that's a really good comparison. I'm going to quickly pull out the Stingray here, and I'm going to show you the comparison of the case back on a modern, fashion-forward, aggressive dive watch. Look at the Stingray on the back of that watch. Look at all the detail, and just so beautiful. And back then, nope. Just a simple plain case back, like most watches were. In fact, the new ones look so much like the original, especially the one I'm holding right here. The case back was etched at least a little bit, so there wouldn't be any chance of somebody trying to pass these off as a counterfeit of the originals. It does have the SKU number on the back, the 2609145.01, and this one shows that it's number 66 of 2000. Same on the back with this one, although this one happens to be number 392 and obviously has a different SKU number. So they did put a little bit on the case back of this, but so they didn't leave it completely blank like the originals were. Now remember, Yuri Gagarin went into space on April 12th, 1961. His watch and this watch are truly manual wind timepieces. You have to actually wind this watch for it to work. It does not have a rotor. It's not automatic. There's no battery. This is a mechanical timepiece with a 17 joule mechanical movement, the 2609 mechanical Polyot movement. Now that's no longer made anymore. The Polyot movement is no longer made. But Sturmanskie, owned by Volmax now, bought up a ton of them before Polyot went under back in the early 2000s. They refurbished them all, and they still have many of them in stock, which they're using on their Yuri Gagarins and on some of the Sputniks as well. Now, the original 2609, which was in Yuri Gagarin's watch, was a 15 joule movement, which had some technical differences between it and what became the 2609, which is used in this movement and this watch. I'm not going to go into all those things. There's geekdom out there, and I applaud that geekdom. Don't get me wrong. I'm a geek in many, many ways, but I'm not going to go into all the different technical aspects of the balance wheel and the pallet jack or anything that changed between the original 2609 and this one, except to say that this does run direct heritage to the movement that was in Yuri Gagarin's watch. The main difference being that this is a 17 joule and his was a 15 joule. Now, I actually have heard some conjecture out there that his may have been 17. It's one of those, things that just goes down with the legends that happen like Yuri Gagarin. One of the things that I love, first of all, let me just quickly show you. These are two of the original colors. Now, if you want the one that's the closest to what Gagarin wore, it's the one here on the right in the light kind of beige color, and then there is the black. Both of these were colors that were produced in the same dial configuration you see here at the original time the Gagarin came out. The watches were actually started being built in the 1940s, and originally they were only for the military, and then they were given to pilots when they graduated from Air Force Flight School, which is how Yuri Gagarin got his watch. And that's one of the things that I really love about the Gagarin story with his watch compared to say, for instance, what happened here in the U.S. And I'm just looking for my, I'm not going to find it right now. I was looking for my wiping cloth, but I don't know where it is at the moment. It's one of the things that happened, when you look at Omega and Bulova and their connection to NASA, you have to acknowledge the fact that those were planned marketing and promotional programs that the brands put together to make sure that they were tying their brands to the U.S. space program. Nothing like that was happening in the Soviet Union. They were not concerned about marketing. I'm just showing you a comparison here again. And then I'm going to move away, Jason, so we don't have any confusion. This is not the one on the left is not the watch you're buying. This is just to give a comparison to the original Gagarins, the closest one that we could get for a comparison. So one of the things that I just love about this story is that this just happened to be Yuri Gagarin's watch. It was his watch that he was given when he graduated from flight school, and it was the watch that he wore into space. There was no planning, there was no thought, there was no let's make a story around the Sturmanskie watch. It's just happenstance. The watch performed flawlessly in space. They had no idea at that point whether mechanical watches would function well in zero gravity and with the radiation, with all the other things that go on. And they did test the watch afterward, and it did function exactly like it was supposed to. And then, of course, became a piece of horological history. And the rest, as they say, is history. But now you've got a chance to really make this all nice and hokey to put a piece of history on your wrist. If you are a collector of the Gagarin watches, you absolutely must own one of these. At least in the time that I have been doing business with Sturmanskie/Volmax, which is now coming up on 16 years, I have not seen them produce a Gagarin watch in the original 33 millimeter. This is something new. They may have done it before my time. In fact, I think they did at one point, but you're talking now, coming up on close to 2 decades ago, the last time that you could get a Gagarin reissue from the original company that produced Gagarin's watch in the original 33 millimeter. Otherwise, this watch is quite similar to the other 40 millimeter Sturmanskie Gagarin watches that are out there on the market today. The dial configuration is the same. The case configuration is the same. It's a size difference. Although I will tell you, I love the strap on these new Sturmanskies. They really stepped up their strap game on these, and they're really beautiful, supple, nice straps. Just a couple of anecdotes. I always like to throw in some stuff about Gagarin. I love his story. I love how, in a lot of ways, it's a folk hero story, and he definitely was a hero of the Soviet Union. Also, sadly, he died very young. I believe it was at the age of 34. He was in a routine test flight. And a number of things went wrong. It was kept in secrecy for many years, and then eventually they blamed the ground crew for some mistakes. Overloaded fuel tanks, some altitude problems due to miscalculation of the weather. And they had actually kept him out of anything that could have been dangerous because they didn't want to lose this great hero of the Soviet Union, obviously, and then the terrible accident happened. But one of the things that I find interesting about Gagarin's flight is he ejected at 7,000 feet and he actually parachuted to the ground, unlike NASA, where we splash landed. He actually parachute ejected, and they were concerned that the International Aeronautic something Federation, I forget the exact, it's in French. They were the governing body, or are the governing body to determine these things in terms of setting records and so forth. They had determined that the pilot had to land with the craft for it to count as a flight that was completed. And in fact, the Soviets, not surprisingly, tried to keep it secret for a while that Gagarin had actually parachuted. They tried to pretend that he landed with the actual Vostok capsule because they didn't want to lose that indication of it being the first true space flight through this official organization. That, when Vostok 2 happened, became pretty obvious because then that was a much more public display of what was happening. Nevertheless, the organization did certify the flight, and it is considered the first human space flight. Another little anecdote, too, is cosmonauts actually carried shotguns with them, and when they landed, they had a shotgun because they might land in Siberia, or when they landed in Siberia, and they might come across a bear. So they actually carried shotguns with them. Just little anecdotes about things like that I love. Nevertheless, getting back to the watch, this is, again, the original sized Yuri Gagarin 33 millimeter watch that is dedicated and commemorated to the first watch in space on the wrist of Yuri Gagarin on April 12th, 1961. And if you want to have the closest thing you can possibly get to the actual originals, and again, those are getting much, much, much harder to come by and getting much more expensive if there truly are appropriate. By the way, be careful if you're looking around on eBay. There's a lot of fakes out there, and a lot of people jerry-rig things up. So just, keep an eye out to make sure that you're being buyer beware, the caveat emptor, if you're looking at the originals on eBay. Nevertheless, if you want something new that you know is going to run well, that you know is going to have the original look, feel, and everything about the original Gagarin with only some slight changes, basically the etching on the case back, this is the watch you want. And these are available at R2A along with other authorized retailers throughout North America. I'm Craig Hester, and until next time, hey, keep watching.